Leafs Converts, TLC OGs, Hockey World. What is up? This is the Leafs Convo podcast. I'm Norman James. Thank you so much for being with us for this Sunday spectacular. It's going to be an episode all about positivity and some reality, and we will target some of the players we think, if they join the Maple Leafs, would help the Buds level up from a second-place team in the NHL to a second-place team in the NHL, but maybe a little bit closer to the front runner in the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mike Augello's ready to go. I'm ready to go. I know you are too, so what do you say? Let's pod. The Leafs Convo starts right now. And here is Mike Augello. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Good morning, Norman. I am well. Not much to talk about after a Leaf victory. How are you?
Not too bad. 5-0 Leafs over the Vancouver Canucks. I thought that was a tidy game. Trevor Moore scoring his first NHL goal. Matthews scoring. Tavares scoring. Igor Ozhiganov with a grape and an apple. And Michael Hutchinson, the era as Leafs goaltender for him, has begun.
Yeah, I found it a little bit humorous that, after the game, and I guess it's great as teammates that they do this, but, Hutchinson gets his first shutout. He was a Leaf fan. He grew up in Barrie. It was a big thing for him. And Freddie Anderson, Garrett Sparks came into the locker room and, patted him on the back and said, congratulations. And if I was Garrett Sparks, I don't know if I would be doing that because this guy might be taking your job. I was joking with a friend yesterday. It says, Garrett Sparks from the Leaf doctors at the pressing of Mike Babcock has been diagnosed with a concussion and is out for the rest of the season. I'm half joking, but honestly, and I didn't hear the comments of Babcock after the game, but I have to say that I'm more confident in Hutchinson after 2 games than I've been with Sparks after 9 starts. And it's because just on the ice, the way that Sparks, he is sort of jumpy back and forth in the net and doesn't give you a sense of calm and confidence. And, Hutchinson's played over 100 NHL games, and, there weren't a ton of great chances yesterday, but I was confident that if it was not a gilt-edged chance, that he was going to make the save. And I don't get that confidence yet with Garrett Sparks. So we know Babcock, I think, has some confidence problems with Garrett Sparks, and we'll just see where it goes. But he may end up with the Marlies as soon as all the guys come back.
Let's not get on a goaltender for having to make 28 easy saves. I mean, that's an indication that the team in front of him is doing its job in limiting chances, or perhaps the opposition is just not up to snuff that night. It's too bad for them. Michael Hutchinson gets his shutout, his first win as a Maple Leaf. He's a cerebral guy. He has the disposition that a goaltender is expected to have, whereas Garrett Sparks has all the tools a goaltender needs to succeed, but his mental makeup, the composition of the way he thinks and the way he acts and carries himself goes against the grain. And I think that's probably what rubs Mike Babcock the wrong way. Add to the fact that it's not like Garrett Sparks has set the world on fire as a goaltender in the NHL, and you have a lot of second guessing when it comes to Garrett Sparks. You have a lot of doubt that is surrounding him. You're not going to generate a lot of confidence and support from the fan base, and most importantly, the guy who fills out the lineup card in the head coach. Along comes Michael Hutchinson, calm, relaxed. I dealt with the guy when he was a London Knight. He's get this, and this is 10 years ago almost. But trust me, he's the same kind of person. Comes in, just does his job, keeps quiet. Forget about all the Leaf fan stuff growing up in Barrie. I mean, that is what it is. You've got a player that seems to fit what the head coach is looking for in a backup. And this is going to be very interesting as we go forward. How does Garrett Sparks, reinstill himself as the number 2 guy, not only in the way he's capable of playing, but mentally, socially? How is this guy going to develop into the cohesive backup goaltender the head coach wants, when it seems now the Leafs have just acquired one?
Well, at the absolute worst, it gives them a stopgap until Anderson's ready. Anderson has skated and practiced the last 2 days in a row on Friday and Saturday. They play Nashville on Monday. They'd have to activate him from IR to get him back in the lineup. And it could be Hutchinson for the 3rd game in a row. The worst case, best case scenario, if they just go back to what they've had before acquiring him is they have a third goaltender that they can send back to the American Hockey League since he was an emergency recall, who they know can play in the NHL. And, if something else happens, if another injury happens, or if Sparks does not play up to snuff, then they have Hutchinson. But I mean, I just yesterday's game, you have to look at what happened the last two games in the losses to the Islanders and Minnesota, and see what happened in yesterday's game and see the difference. Vancouver was not able to cut off the long stretch pass. Vancouver was not able to press the Leafs defense in their own zone. The Leafs essentially, they passed to the open space. They got their defense moving. They rushed the puck up the ice. And once they can do that and get the puck to their forwards, guys like Gardner, Dermott, and Riley getting it to the forwards in stride. It's tough to beat the Leafs because they're so good offensively, but you see the blueprint of what it's going to take from the opposition to stop the Leafs. And that, we saw that from the Islanders and from the Wild. Close checking on their blue line. Nick Foligno said it apparently a couple weeks ago. Below the hashes, their defense is not good. And again, I'll say it again, that's where they have to improve before the trade deadline.
The Leafs are going to have to design themselves to be able to take on all comers. It's nice that you can manhandle a Vancouver team that's fighting for a playoff position. Having seen what you saw in the Canucks game, what are you expecting from the Maple Leafs and Predators at Scotiabank Arena with the PK Subban show coming to town?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a totally different situation. Although, there are a couple defensemen on Vancouver that are having pretty good seasons. I mean, you look at the depth on the blue line with Nashville, with Subban back, with Yossi, with Ryan Ellis, with Matthias Ekholm. They're three lines deep. They have a world-class goaltender and Pekka Rinne, and UC Saros is not a bad backup. So they're a pretty complete team. It'll be a tough task for the Leafs. If it is Anderson coming back, it'll be his first game since December 22nd, so there'll be a little bit of rust. I mean, one thing I think from the Vancouver game, and I think you have to be impressed with the play since he's been called up of Trevor Moore. It does give the Leafs a little bit of a firepower and a little bit of a not advantage, but the speed that Moore shows on the fourth line. There's not a lot of teams that have a speedster like that with the ability with skill, and I think he does have skill. And he has done pretty well in 5 games. I think it's a goal and 2 assists, which, by the way, I think it's the same amount of points that a guy named Nylander has in 12 or 13 games. But once Tyler Ennis comes back, they'll be a little slow. They'll be a little small on the fourth line, but they'll be very speedy. And that a line of Moore, Ennis, and Lindholm, with Gauthier probably sitting on the bench, because I think he'd be the guy to sit on the bench, I think would provide some problems for teams as a matchup. So I think Trevor Moore has taken the advantage of getting called up and playing well. And they liked him at training camp, and he has done nothing to take him away from that so far.
Your buddy Freddie Gauthier, saw him lumbering out there against the Canucks. I think he shot a puck that was about 10 feet wide of the net. You also made the point that Trevor Moore scored his first NHL goal while on a line with Lindholm and Gauthier. Now, the way he did it was odd man rush, 2-on-1 back the other way. You have the puck. What are you going to do? Pass it and limit the opportunity to score, or shoot it yourself? And Trevor Moore's the kind of guy that he takes it upon himself to try to get things done, and he got it done, and that's good to see. Look, we don't need to belabor our thoughts on the fourth line, but Par Lindholm is William Nylander's valet, and I don't know, whatever the heck what Freddie Gauthier is doing. Look, those guys are trying hard, and when you compare their skill set and their ice time and what they're required to do against the stars of this team, it's not fair. I mean, you're comparing a 2004 Corolla in Par Lindholm to a 2019 Ferrari in John Tavares. The contrast is so stark, though. What you want to see is you want to see a little bit more of consistent production, guys who are creating on their own despite the ice time. And that's what a Tyler Ennis does. And that's what a Trevor Moore would likely do. And the question is for Mike Babcock. I mean, is he going to throw caution to the wind and maybe mix up the way that he would go about penciling in a lineup in order to generate a little bit more spice and potential down there? Or do you just want to keep it within the guidelines of his coaching structure and just think to himself, the fourth line has a purpose and we don't need it to do much more than that?
I think he needs, going into the playoffs, a fourth line that is capable of playing more than 7 or 8 minutes. Now, to have confidence in that line, to be able to not be a matchup problem, to not be stuck in their own zone, because at times their fourth line this year has done that, and we've seen it in the last couple of years when they made the trade for Brian Boyle. I mean, I didn't agree with the deal, but I didn't. Brian Boyle is a fine player and a good addition on the fourth line, providing size and experience and face-off ability. And it's not above Kyle Dubas to maybe make an ad before the deadline up front. I still think that I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, when Marcus Foligno is speed bagging John Tavares because Tavares came to Travis Dermott's defense. That's the reason why I think you need somebody who provides a little bit of pushback. Tavares had to be the guy to respond to Foligno and Dermott doing something, and you don't want your star players having to, slash at a Marcus Foligno, a bigger, tougher, less talented player. You need somebody who plays on the fourth line, who provides a little bit of pushback, or maybe even in the top 9. So I think that's, Freddie Gauthier is a big player. He's not a tough player. He's a good kid. I have nothing against him. I just don't think he's an NHLer.
If you're 6'5",
you have to use your size.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of fans don't understand that. And to your point about the physicality and the capability of pushing back when and where it is necessary, a lot of fans they like the verbal posturing. So on social media, it's telling somebody they're stupid or dumb, or gagging up on them for a tweet that one person didn't like and everybody else agrees is terrible. When it comes to actually dropping the mitts and throwing down, or it's hard to fathom because it's violence. But when you're in a claustrophobic setting and you have big men running at each other, hammering on each other, this kind of instinct it's ingrained. So to turn around and say, well, that's just unacceptable, makes zero sense. If you think that being on social media propagates some negative behavior that you're going to condone because you're on the giving end of making fun of somebody or dishing out disses because somebody says something bad, why doesn't it make sense in professional sports, guys wanting to fight each other or guys want to get physical because one feels infringed upon or one feels like they were done wrong? I mean, that's just we can't contradict ourselves, and we also have to understand that whether you think it's violent or terrible doesn't matter. It's what the Maple Leafs need to do to make sure they have as much of an arsenal as possible to help them succeed and win the Stanley Cup, because that's it. And if you need to bring in a guy who is cost effective and who's not going to kill you, and you can find those players who have the ability to play the game, but also bring some sandpaper, bring some toughness, there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you consider that some of the teams that you're going to be up against along this journey towards the ultimate, and that's a Stanley Cup, are going to want to play that way. And you can't just keep saying to yourself, well, we don't play that way and that's just the way it is, and if we lose, we lose. No, you make the adjustments. Because I'm sure if a team wanted to play run and gun, it was all about the flash and dash, you'd say to yourself, well, we have that to match in spades. Well, you know what? It's a mosaic, this process, and you better be prepared for it.
I just think, and you have to look at what's happened in the last couple of weeks since they got their full complement back. The Bruins are moving. They beat Buffalo last night 2-1. They're a team, and you look at where the standings are right now, that are probably going to be 2 or 3 in the Atlantic, and that's probably where the Leafs are going to be. So that you have to be, if you're Kyle Dubas, you have to be prepared for a Bruins matchup. And I don't think you can fight fire with fire, because you're never going to acquire the amount of I think pushback players, for lack of a better term, to match them. But you just have to be able to send the message that we're not going to be pushed around, and that's team toughness, and everybody will have to step up if they play the Bruins. But they need somebody who, if a guy like Chara or if a guy like David Backes tries to run over Mitch Marner, that somebody's going to say, you can't do that, and we have to, we're going to – what Wendell Clark did with the LA Kings back in '93, when McSorley hit Gilmore, he went to the Kings bench and says, you do that again, and I'm taking out Gretzky. I mean, that may be ancient history, but it still applies.
Oh, Wendell Clark is such a bad guy. Listen, folks, you might not like it, but it's good for you. And if it's good for you, it's probably good for us. And if it's good for the Maple Leafs, I hope they do it. Kyle Dubas is the guy who's got some really interesting decisions on the horizon, and the Leafs Convo will be there to react no matter what he does. Bo Horvat last night post-game, I'd be worried if we weren't getting chances, but we are. The Leafs are a great hockey team. There's a reason they're at the top of the league. Bo Horvat.
Good London night.
Yeah, another ex-London night. They're all over the place. It's interesting. A lot of people in London or Knights fans will tweet me, yeah, he's an ex-London Knight, go Knights. And I'm thinking to myself, I covered junior hockey for 16 years. I don't work in television anymore, at least not right now. I'm done with those days. I'm all about the Leafs Convo. I don't even want to think about going into a junior hockey arena. I put in my time, and it was a good time, but it's over now. Michael, real quick, who are the Maple Leafs targeting, or who should they target via trade to help do what we've been talking about the last 20 minutes? Level up, improve themselves, and essentially armor up for the playoff run.
Well, I found it interesting, and I tweeted it after the very informative Saturday Night Headlines segment on Hockey Night in Canada, that Elliot Friedman had mentioned Carolina and their situation with a couple of their UFAs, guys like Michael Furland, who's a big forward. I mean, I could see the Leafs possibly be interested in him, but I don't think they want to spend a lot of assets on bringing in a top 9 or even a fourth line forward. If it's something they can do inexpensively and take advantage of their cap space, I think they will. But I don't think they would want to waste their assets on that in an area where they are strong within the organization. I continue to say it's going to be defense, and the name that Elliot Friedman brought up that has been connected with the Leafs for a couple of instances going back to his days in Calgary is Dougie Hamilton. And, Carolina has 4 right-hand shot defensemen, and Hamilton, they got in the deal for Hannafin and Elias Lindholm. He's under contract for another couple of years at a little under $6 million. This is the concern. It's like, I mean, when he gets traded, if he gets traded by Carolina, be his 4th team, and he was drafted in, I think, 2011. So that doesn't send exactly a message of somebody who is either doing what the coaching staff is doing or melding with the team that he's with. There's no doubt, how talented he is, but it's just a question of whether he would fit into the sort of, to use your term, the mosaic of the Maple Leafs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they need a defenseman of that ilk. I think he's a top pairing guy. He played top pairing with Boston with Chara. He played top pairing with Giordano with Calgary. He scored 50 points in this league. He only has 13 with Carolina. And according to Friedman's report, they're looking for a quote scorer or a sniper in a deal for Hamilton. So
yeah.
That's where, I mean, A, you don't know the fit. B, you don't know what it's going to cost. And C, right now, we don't know whether the Leafs are interested in Hamilton because maybe he provides something that they already have. He's more of an offensive defenseman. If they're going out there and you have your pick, a choice of guys who are rumored to be on the block, I still go back to Alex Pietrangelo because I think he's everything. He's a defensive defenseman. He's an offensive defenseman.
So what are they waiting for?
Well, I think they're waiting to find out whether he's actually available. Unfortunately, it's not Loblaws. You can't go in and say, I'll take an Alex Pietrangelo. You know, it's
Don't you mean Kroger's or Tops, Mike? Considering your location.
no, I'm talking to our fan base. It's like, go to Longo's and get yourself a sandwich. You know, but no, it's not that. And unfortunately, I mean, I wish it was back before the. I mean, because essentially before the salary cap, it was just money, and they could go out and spend whatever they need to get the guy. But in this instance, that's not the case, and we don't know whether St. Louis. There's been rumors about Colton Parayko. They may want to trade Colton Parayko to be able to extend Alex Pietrangelo. They may want to trade Pietrangelo because they don't want to pay him on a new contract. You don't know what Doug Armstrong is thinking. I'm sure Kyle Dubas has a better idea, but we won't know for sure until we get closer to the deadline, when the price will probably, the market will go up and the bidding will go up, and then we'll see if Kyle Dubas makes the move that Lou Lamoriello didn't last year when Tampa Bay acquired Ryan McDonough. The Leafs were interested in him. They finished second, and look at what Ryan McDonough is doing with Tampa Bay right now.
I wish the Leafs did acquire McDonough and didn't spend that second round pick on Thomas Plekanec. The Leafs have enough shiny and new stuff. The Leafs don't need to acquire a D-man who basically adds to what they have. And this is the argument about Jake Gardiner. The reason why they let him walk after this season is because, one, they have Morgan Riley, who's overall just better. And then you have Travis Dermott, who is kind of like a Jake Gardiner 2.0. And you have Timothy Liljegren coming through. You have Rasmus Sandins. You have enough Jake Gardiners. Now that he's expensive and, he's essentially in the way, you move him out. Dougie Hamilton with a couple of years left at what 5.75? Sure. Yep. But is he now coming in to basically be what Jake Gardiner will soon to be expired as?
I think it's within the realm of possibility of them adding a defenseman or two before the deadline and improving the area that is the most weakest. I mean, this is the crapshoot. The Leafs could lose in the first round to Boston. The Leafs could win the Stanley Cup. The Leafs could get to the second round and lose to Tampa. They could get to the conference final. We know that they're going to make the playoffs. We just don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs. And the job of the general manager, and I'm sure he knows this better than I, is to give this team and give his coach the best team and the best chance to win. And honestly, right now, going into the playoffs, standing pat and not improving your blue line, if you can make a trade that is beneficial, and any deal that they make for a top four defenseman is going to basically be the replacement for Jake Gardiner next year. They'll have Gardiner, they'll keep him as an own rental, and then they'll let him walk, and whoever they get, whether it's a Chris Tanev or a Pietrangelo or Parayko or whoever, that guy is going to be in place and take over the role that Jake Gardiner had as the second pairing guy. To me, that's clear as that, because I don't see Gardiner taking less than $6.5 to $7 million. He's not going to take $1.5 million haircut to stay in Toronto, as much as people would like to think that he would. It's not realistic. So, I mean, that's what Dubas has to do, and we'll see if he does.
Just let him go, fans. Holy smokes. What is this obsession with Jake Gardiner? He's been around a long time. He's done well. You have other young players coming through the pipeline who are going to be just as good or better. Just as good skill, but a better head, a better sense of what to do with the puck, less of a crisis mode kind of thing, and more of a stoicism. Just let him go, man. Holy smokes. Mike, one of the things that does concern me, and we've got to get out of here, is that, and again, you can't just hang on to what you've got and for dear life and not want to part with it if you will want to take that next step. But Kasperi Kapanen is just so much fun to watch, and he's really grown leaps and bounds, and as expected. I mean, this is a guy who was brought into Toronto via the Phil Kessel trade with Pittsburgh. I have a feeling that if the Leafs do make a deal to acquire a top-end defenseman, it's going to be Kasperi Kapanen going back the other way and not William Nylander. I don't see how William Nylander was traded during the season after everything they've gone through. And hey, he was a +3 last night. Apparently the plus-minus means something now to the Nylanderites because their boy was on the ice for 3 goals. Were you applauding there, Mike?
No. But I don't know whether that is a bridge that they will go down in terms of trading for the defenseman. I think that they recognize the Kapanen's speed is an extreme advantage. I mean, if Pietrangelo is available and that's the price, then I think they'll pay it. But I think that they're looking for a defenseman that they may be able to give up, a first round pick, a top prospect, a guy like a Liljegren. And if it's a defenseman who's got a year or two left of the contract, I think they'll go down that road. If it's somebody who's a legitimate top pairing guy, I don't think they're going to they'll have to be dragged kicking and screaming into giving up Kapanen. I continue to think that if they don't get that defenseman this year before the deadline, that you'll see Nylander and his $8.3 million bonus get traded after July 1st. I'm still confident of that fact, but nothing is guaranteed. But I don't think they're anxious to give up on Kasperi Kapanen. But if they have to, they will. But I don't think they will.
Michael, it's been fun. Get ready for the Predators and Leafs from Scotiabank Arena. The PK Subban show comes to town. Just ask them. Have a good one.
Thanks, Norman.
That will conclude this edition of the Leafs Convo podcast, Sunday Spectacular Styles. Was it all that I made it out to be? No? Why don't you let me know directly inside the YouTube comment section. You can also get at me on Twitter at Norman James TLC. There's Mike at Mike in Buffalo. And of course, the prospect Prince is back at Kyle Outridge TLC. The Prince with a nice examination of Leafs prospects from far and wide and how they figure into the plans for the organization in 2019. It's educational stuff. I recommend you get into it on all of our podcast platforms and, of course, the YouTube channel. If you think that maybe a sponsorship with the Leafs Convo might be in order for you in this new year, I'd love to hear your plans. theleafsconvo@gmail.com. You can also reach us through our Patreon page. We have some interesting things there and ways you can level up with the Leafs Convo personally. For Mike Augello, I'm Norman James. Let's get ready for the Predators and Leafs. The Leafs Convo's out.